Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Kyushu University and the Institute for Asian and Oceanian Studies, I'd like to welcome all of our virtual guests today, and especially those speakers who have joined us from Australia to share their expertise in the circular economy. As you might be aware, the government of Japan is currently pursuing more ambitious plans to expand circular economy initiative in Japan. Although our nation has enjoyed leadership in recycling and has pioneered Kaizen management, we found ourselves suddenly playing catch-up in applied circular economy strategy. Therefore, we are honored by the opportunities to learn from the experiences in Australia and other nations, and welcome the opportunity to explore collaborations in the circular economy with Australian counterparts and help connect the Australian and Japanese business and mutual planners. As many of you know, that this workshop is the very first program organized by Professor Valentine after his new assignment in our institute in April. I truly hope the workshop today is fruitful and the beginning of many more collaborative ventures. Back to you, Professor Valentine.
Oh, great. Thanks, Prashmizu. It was great to have you involved in this. There are a lot of people to thank behind the scenes for setting this up. I wanted to thank Iwaida-san, Obata-san for all of their work in preparing the materials. So all of the slides that have been circulated are thanks to them. Thanks to Anai Sensei for managing the logistics and Ueda Sensei for coordinating the IT. Also like today to thank Hokabe-san and Hisada-san from TEMDEC for online coordination support. They're the ones that are going to keep this moving smoothly. Thanks to Sumimoto-san and Ida-san who are handling the translations. So for those of us, for those who are coming in from Australia or other English-speaking areas, everything's going to be in English except the final session. There will be some Japanese. For those of you who are coming in from Japan, there is a translation in English. So maybe for those who didn't understand what I just said there, もし、日本語で聞かせたい方は、下の右の方に、日本語の通訳がありますので、どうぞそのリンクを、クリックしてください。And finally, thank you to Shimizu Sensei for finding time to give a welcome to this and for supporting the circular economy initiatives here. You know, with QAOS, our mission here at the Asia and Oceanic Studies Institute is to focus on SDGs. And in particular, we focus on on-site, on-demand research, meaning in the field, active research in Asia. And of course, we consider Asia to be, from a broader sense, you know, sweeping all the way down through East, South Asia, and all the way down to Oceania. So today's talk on the circular economy is really an attempt to try to begin to connect you know, some bridges so that we can begin to collaborate on this important area of economic development. Okay, so with that said, if you have any questions during the workshop, there are opportunities to have Q&As. I think what we'll do is I've got in the agenda, we're going to have Q&As after everyone speaks. And I think rather than do that, I'll allocate in this morning session 10 minutes for Q&A from each person. And then if we have a little bit more time, we can continue the Q&A afterwards. So for those that are joining in Japanese, もし意見あるいは質問があれば、やはりチャットボックスの方にそのメッセージを irete kudasai. Great. Okay, so off we go. Our first speaker is me. And I'm just going to upload my slide here. And while I'm doing that, maybe try to introduce myself a little bit, which is not easy because I actually can't do two things at the same time. But let's just try this anyway. Can someone just please confirm that you can see my full slide share?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Professor Scott Valentine.
Yes, we can see you slide.
Fantastic. And I've actually been involved in the circular economy for, gosh, I would think almost about 15 years now. When I started to get involved in this, it wasn't really called the circular economy. We were calling it things like industrial symbiosis and industrial ecology, closed loop practices. And so, you know, this is really quite a new phenomenon or a new, what I would refer to as a new strategic lens. And so I thought today, before we start, it's very important, you know, to talk a little bit about, you know, what it is. I've got a bit of a background in this, you know, in addition to my roles in academia, I'm also a senior circular economy advisor with KPMG. I helped to set up their circular economy practice in Australia. I'm chair of the Australian Circular Economy Hubs Advisory Board. And, you know, have been, you know, gratefully involved with many of our speakers for the last couple of years now. So I've really seen a massive sea change in Australia. And we're, you know, I think a couple of years away from really seeing a formalization of the circular economy. And so that, I think, bodes well for all of these pioneers who have come to speak, you know, on behalf of the circular economy today. Okay, circular economy. What is it and why should we care? Well, let me just flip that question around and ask, first of all, why should we care? As we all know, population growth has been nothing less than spectacular over the last 50 years. So, you know, if you just look at this statistic alone, we've had, you know, over a doubling of population since 1970. And so, you know, we've got more mouths to feed, more consumers on the planet than ever before. In fact, I remember a statistic saying that there are more people currently living on the planet than has lived throughout our entire history. Something to think about. Whilst population has been growing, so has the growth in affluence. So, you know, here again, 1970 to 2020, we're seeing an enormous tenfold, over tenfold, 12-fold increase in per capita, so per person wealth. So put these two together. We've got higher populations and people consuming at higher levels. And as a result of that, we've got these enormous increases in GDP. So here's the current global GDP on a comparative basis. And as you can see, we're probably looking at somewhere around 26, 27-fold increase since 1970. Now, underpinning all of this is all, you know, things, goods and services that are consumed, energy, resources. And so what we're seeing is a massive, unprecedented drawdown of resources. And as a result of that, we are left in a planet where we are essentially taking out more than is annually renewed. So I often talk about this in terms of a bank account. What is happening right now is we had $10,000 in our bank accounts, and we've been earning interest of 10% every year. So that's $1,000 every year we have to spend. And that $1,000 we've actually been taking out. And in addition to that, we've been taking out 1,000 more. So next year, we've only got 9,000. We produce 900 in interest take out another 1,000. Now we've got 7,100. So do you see what's happening here? Like a bank account, if you are living beyond your interest that is provided, we are beginning to see a depletion of our global capital stocks. And that means that there are fewer resources to support our economic futures. Of course, it's a massive concern for us now, because that means when you have scarcity, that the price of goods goes up, right? And we see this in commodities. We see this in oil and gas recently. We see this in rare metals. There's a gradual inflation of prices. But what we as human beings on this planet, and as parents who are, bequeathing to our kids, hopefully some sort of future, that we have a responsibility to act as stewards over this, and we are doing, frankly, a pitiful job of this. Now, why has this all come about? Well, this has all come about because of this type of rationale. So the economists say a rising tide lifts all boats. Now, that's really not fair, is it? Because in the rising tide, some are winners and some are still winners, but not so much so. And that's what this cartoon conveys here. Here's the average worker saying, yeah, well, that's fine. My plight has been a little bit better, but I still like your boat better. Now, globally, we see this as well. Of course, in terms of global poverty indexes are going down, but they're going down at a very, very low pace. And so we still have almost 1 billion people on the planet who lack access to, adequate sanitation and sufficient levels of income. So this actually would be acceptable, perhaps, if it was true that a rising tide lifts all the boats. But that's actually not what we're seeing. Globally, what we're seeing is what's conveyed by this cartoon. So we are seeing, the wealthy get wealthier, and they are, in effect, offloading much of their pollution and their, as we economists would say, the externalities onto other people. Case in point, 50% of all global wealth is in the hands of this 1% that you see in this boat here. 50%, half of all of the wealth in the world. 85% of all the wealth in the world is in the hands of 10%. So we have massive inequalities that are going on. And while this is all happening, we have a rise in extinctions as a result largely to things like deforestation. We've got climate change issues largely as a result of greenhouse gas emissions that occur as part of the economic cycle. We've got overwhelmed landfills, not primarily in industrialized nations, but often in developed nations. We've got a global drawdown of resources, and as I talked about earlier, this global drawdown of resources is leading to scarcity, which is leading to higher prices. We've got jobs that are lost under the auspices of free trade. What that means is that, we felt that free trade should actually boost jobs because of the volume of trade that's occurring, but that's actually not happening because we are seeing a drain of many of the labor intensive jobs to developing nations where people live and work under, extremely, unacceptable conditions. So that's where we are. So why does the circular economy play a role in this? Well, as we begin to search for ways to address the inequalities associated with our current economic development system. And, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, indeed, many of them are designed around that regard. SDGs 1 and 2 that focus on poverty the elimination of hunger are largely about removing the inequalities. SDG 5 is about gender equalities. SDG 10 is about, just general global inequalities. So as we begin globally to work toward these, we need some time. We need some help in staving off the resource onslaught that is occurring. So in comes the circular economy. The whole idea of the circular economy, as it says here, is it's a strategic new development paradigm. So let's not mistake this as being purely about sustainability. It's a development paradigm based on a very simple management principle, which is if you can reuse or reduce your resources, you can use them more efficiently. You can use them once, twice, 3, 4 times. And as a result of that, you're actually capturing the wealth that went in to making the products or services to begin with. So this is why this particular frame here, when you see reduce, reuse, repair, remanufacture, recycle, residual recovery, this is called a hierarchy for a reason. It means that at the beginning of this, the top levels, these are the more desirable actions. So if we can reduce our resources, either at a national level or at a corporate level, what we're really doing there is we're improving the efficiency of our economic system. So this is delivering 2 things. It's delivering better economic value at the same time as delivering better ecological performance, so a lower environmental footprint. Similarly with reuse, and this is where I get into sort of my analogies, and forgive me for repeating things that some of you have already heard. Certainly some of the speakers have heard me say this numerous times. Let's compare reusing something to recycling something to understand why this hierarchy is important. So let's imagine, actually, you know what? Let's compare repair and recycle, because that's a more vivid example I can give you. Let's imagine that we have a computer and our computer isn't quite running up to speed. And so we're thinking to ourselves that we would like to upgrade our computer. And we have a choice here. We can either take our computer into a shop and have them put in, some additional RAM and some additional storage, or we can actually take that computer and we can go to another computer store, buy a computer, and then just simply recycle our computer, right? Okay, so if we compare the two, the repair strategy, think about the types of resources that it requires to repair or upgrade a computer. All you need to do is take your computer down to a store or a shop that repairs these types of things. You leave it with them. They put in a couple additional parts. They put in some labor, and then you take it back home. So all you've really incurred is the cost of transport, the cost of your time, and the cost of parts and labor, right? And you've got a perfectly acceptable computer working again. Now let's look at the recycle play. So remember, the second option was I take my computer and I recycle it, and I go to the shop and I buy a new one. So what happens to my computer? Well, it goes to the recycler. So first of all, someone's got to collect it. They bring it to a facility that disaggregates, takes apart the computer. And indeed, you're going to hear later from Julie McKay, who runs Enable Australia, who has a company that does just that. So they take your computer apart, they take all the parts and separate them into into the materials. So you've got metals in one place, you've got plastics in another, etc., rubber in another. And these all go to another recycler. The recycler then takes all the metals or takes all the plastics and they mulch them together. So if you're a plastic manufacturer like or plastic advanced materials processing company like Steve Morris's Close the Loop, or like Dave Hodges, Plastic Forests. We're going to hear both from them today. Basically, they would take this and break them down into constituent parts and then, send them on to be remanufactured back into a computer. Wow, what a long process that is. Do you see what's happening there? So in addition to, all of the energy that goes into this process, there's transportation, equipment, machinery, a high amount of resources are going into the recycling process. And that is why, if we want the circular economy to work, we need to be focusing on these higher level activities. That's where the true value is. That's where the profits are. That's where the ecological value is. And so this is really what the circular economy looks like if you're viewing it from a macro perspective. What you've got there in a circular economy is you've got a number of companies, so here on the left, these producers, who are practicing circular economy principles. They are trying to first and foremost refuse or reduce the types of resources they use. Then they're trying to reuse them. Then they're trying to repair them. Then they're trying to remanufacture them, et cetera, et cetera. So these producers all have strategies in order to try to get the materials back to allow them to either reuse, repair, remanufacture, et cetera. Meanwhile, in the circular economy, you also have consumers who are playing a similar role. They're trying to maximize their value by minimizing their costs. So they are trying to reduce and refuse the resources that they would normally use. That saves them money. They're trying to reuse or repair what they can, and that saves them money. And at the end of the day, the last thing that they want to do is to recycle or send this off for recovery. So this is what's happening in the circular economy. You've got two groups of people, producers and consumers, who are all trying to aim for the higher level outcomes in order to enhance their own situation. Meanwhile, up at the top here, you've got the national strategies where policies are created in order to encourage the reuse of resources and in order to discourage virgin resources. And so these are all, up at the top here, government policies that get put in place in order to encourage this circular economy. At the end of the day, for resources that can no longer be reused, repaired, recycled, etc., you've got resources going into landfill. And the theory is if you're running a circular economy effectively, you can immediately profit from this type of economic system. Okay. So now we're on board. We all understand what the circular economy is all about. The benefits are actually quite straightforward here. So, as you can see here, down at the bottom, and I don't know why we have this very strange green line here. I'm hoping that I'm the only one that can see this. I don't know what this green box is. It looks very artistic though, doesn't it? As you can see here, I've just pulled out two statistics because I just wanted to convey how much money there is, how much additional profits there are that are captured within our current, that are not captured within our current economic system. So one study done by McKinsey looked at Europe's resource productivity, and they discovered that a 3% boost in productivity, so using your resources 3% better, would generate cost savings of approximately $2.4 trillion. $2.4 trillion just by improving 3%. Now, of course, that also means local jobs, because in a circular economy, you need to create things locally. You need to tie in together networks. You need to build resilient supply chains. So the idea of a circular economy, even amidst threats such as COVID or geopolitical threats that we are seeing increasingly in the world, by having localized supply chains, you've actually encouraged more or infused more resilience into the networks. We're going to see later that the circular economy is about innovative design. And so it's about, using things in a more innovative manner. So more value added. It's about connecting communities, because in the circular economy, there are jobs for everyone. There are different roles that people can play as we begin to look for creative ways to utilize your resources. The operating efficiencies that are involved in the circular economy make businesses more profitable. And because they're more profitable, they're more resilient to times such as this, where you have a downturn in economic situation that, could potentially undermine a business if it is reliant on overseas supply chains, for example. So these are all benefits that are associated with the circular economy. There's one other benefit that, I don't think gets talked about enough, which is that the circular economy organization in the Netherlands calculates that 62% of global greenhouse gas emissions are released during the extraction, processing, manufacturing of goods. So that means that if we have a more efficient way of manufacturing or remanufacturing goods, we have a potential strategy for contributing to abatement of greenhouse gas emissions as well. So today, our workshop is really about, in certain ways, celebrating pioneers and companies who are doing things the right way. So we're going to hear this morning from 4 speakers. Steve Morris from Close the Loop will likely talk a bit about Reconofault and one of their circularity solutions. Peter Padromos from Eagle Lighting will talk a little bit about his efforts in the circular economy and his pioneering effort to focus on a cradle-to-cradle certification and the trials and tribulations attributed to that. We will have Dave Hodge from Plastic Forest. He'll talk about some of the products that he's been creating, largely through soft plastics and a very innovative remanufacturing process. And finally, down at the bottom left, we'll hear from Julie McKay, who will infuse a bit of a social consciousness into the discussion and show us how her organization twins circular economy strategies with social entrepreneurship strategies. In the afternoon, we're going to shift from the corporate to the policymaker side, and once again introduce really 4 magnificent examples of the circular economy. So we've got Guy Forterre is coming from the embassy in the Netherlands to talk about the circular economy in a leading nation. The other leading nation is Denmark, and I'm going to talk a little bit about circular economy strategy in Denmark. In Australia, we've got 2 pioneering policymakers with us today. One will be Ian Overton from South Australia, who will talk about the efforts of Green Industries South Australia in creating a circular economy in Adelaide. And finally, last but not least, our friend George Osborne will come from the municipality of Hume, which is the municipality that hosts the Melbourne Airport, very large industrial aggregation of businesses. And he's going to talk about efforts that they are making toward positioning Hume as a circular city. So why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because here in Japan, the Japanese government last year put out this Circular Economy Vision 2020 white paper, and in it they've announced intentions to develop more ambitious goals toward the circular economy. And so this is the beginning of a conversation here, and I believe that there are lessons that can be learned here in Japan from our Australian and other overseas counterparts. They've really gone from a leader to a laggard meaning that in the 1990s, 1997 to be precise, they announced this Ecotown program here in Japan. The Ecotown program wound up, I believe it was about 26 ecotowns wound up being developed all across the country. And here's a list here on the right. And basically the whole idea behind it was if you wanted to create an ecotown, the ecotown was really designed to reprocess materials, but do so in a way that, you know, was connected to the community in a greater extent. And there was supposed to be a lot of innovation infused in this in order to get money from, you know, from the government to support these. The developers of these ecotowns needed to demonstrate that there was a new innovation being, you know, applied to these ecotowns. Sadly, the ecotowns largely wound up being, you know, advanced recycling facilities more than the, you know, circular economy networks that we're seeing today. And so Japan, although it has some fantastic success and leadership positions in recycling and recycling technologies, it also needs to play a little bit of catch up when it comes to the strategic application of the circular economy. So that's the future, folks. We'll leave it at that. I welcome you all to today's workshop. I'm sure it's going to be productive because all of these speakers are just absolutely magnificent. We will have a short break. I've probably talked too long. Oh, not too bad. We will recommence at 10:10, and our first speaker will be Mr. Steve Morris from Close the Loop. Stay tuned. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Scott. Great to be with you today, mate. That's a great intro.
As always, thank you so much for joining. You know, actually, it's I was looking at this lineup and I was thinking, wow, this is just my go-to list. You know, when I'm looking for inspirational speakers, this is the group, this is the gang.
The dream team, you reckon, mate?
Absolutely. Now, Steve, I'm going to, the whole idea behind this is I'll introduce everybody. And so while I'm making introductions, if you wouldn't mind just uploading your slide and we can go, and or you can do that now if you so desire. And
oh, really? Okay. So I'll share my screen now.
Sure.
Exciting news about Close the Loop, Steve, and your listing and partnerships.
Yeah, thank you, George. Yeah, it is indeed, mate. We're very, very passionate about the next couple of years in our wonderful city of Hume, my friend.
Fantastic. So the listing has now been formalized, has it?
Yes, it has. And we just need shareholder approval, which will be pretty much laid down as there. And we've been accepted by ASX and ASIC and everybody else to move forward. All the deals have been done, the documents signed, and we'll be listing before the end of the year. I would say the end of November.
Well, how about that? I can't even imagine how much work went into that one.
Oh, well, luckily there's some people much smarter than me that engineer these things. And, you know, my job now is to make sure that we meet the numbers year on year.
Congratulations, Steve. I didn't know you're doing that.
Thanks, Dave. Is it, Dave? I've got my screen open. I'm just wondering how I can did you see that screen then, by the way?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So what am I going to...
Hi, Peter and Julie. Great to see you both. I'll jump off because I'm not part of this session, but looking forward to visiting now that lockdown's ending here in this great city of Melbourne.
Yep.
Great seeing you early, George. Thanks for popping by.
Bye.
We'll be there for your presentation, George.
Yeah. Hi, Peter. Hi, Julie. Welcome. It's great to see you both.
Hello. Thanks for having us today. It's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect timing. We're about 3 minutes away from kicking off this session. And
hi, Julie. Hi, Peter.
G'day, Steve.
G'day, Steve.
Woo! I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but Mr. Morris, are you sharing your slides now? Now we can
Yes.
see your email.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for.
Yeah. So could you switch the screen? Maybe you are selecting the outlook. Okay, now
There we go.
we can see.
There we
Is
go.
that bit full
Yep.
screen now?
Love it.
Yes. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. I wish I was still that young.
You know, I was just thinking, how did you get Arnold Schwarzenegger to do this?
Oh, absolutely, mate. Look at the date there, Scott. The Melbourne Age, 1998.
Oh, lovely. Steve, no different. There's no difference at all. We can't tell the difference whatsoever.
You're always a gentleman.
Right here. Okay, just get 2 minutes and then we'll launch.
Okay. And I'm going to start still 20 minutes, Scott, or a little bit less? Would you like me to trim it slightly?
Well, no, it's fine. 20's good. And we'll basically, if it's okay with you all, I suggest that we do 10 minutes of Q&A after each speaker. And then if we don't quite have 10 minutes, well, that's okay too. We can have a little bit more of a chat at the end as well.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we've got Steve, then Peter, then Dave, and then Julie with the fireworks at the end.
Whoop, whoop.
No pressure. No pressure, Julie. Alrighty. Let us launch, shall we? Okay, folks. Well, welcome to session 1. As I was saying during the break, this is really my go-to list of inspirational speakers in the circular economy. You know, all of our speakers have very unique strategies that they are attempting to employ, and as a result of that, they have all learned some very valuable lessons along the road. And I was hoping that today we could, you know, share some of the insights that they have, you know, drawn from their experiences. Our first speaker is Mr. Steve Morris, and Steve's the founder of Close the Loop. It's a product stewardship and circular economy company that specializes in closing the loop on consumer products. You know, one of their core elements are toner cartridges. They reprocess virtually all of Australia's toner cartridges, and they take these cartridges and they break them down and they put them into other goods, which I'm sure that Steve is going to talk about. He's truly a pioneer in circular economy thinking. He was instrumental in helping to set up the Australian Circular Economy Hub. He is a go-to voice in the circular economy at virtually every circular economy you know, meeting, workshop, conference, you know, and largely it's because of his absolute entrepreneurial spirit about, you know, how to achieve circularity. I just know personally from knowing Steve, you know, gratefully for the last few years now, that, you know, what's really special about him is, in addition to his entrepreneurial skills, he's got this tremendous breadth of knowledge because he's constantly reading and constantly updating himself. So I'm sure all of that will come through today. Steve, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Scott. Very generous words. I appreciate that as I just turn my clock on here. I really appreciate being with you also. Good morning to those in Japan, and good afternoon. Just ticked over to those joining from Australia, and I noticed some people from Europe as well. So good evening, good late evening to you. Thank you so much. Close the Loop is a small to medium enterprise here in Australia with divisions in the USA and Europe. But we did start way back in 2001, or as this newspaper article suggests, even before that, in 1998 and mid-90s. My mind was turning towards circularity, and as Scott mentioned earlier, not because it was a term then, but because it was made sense and it hit my personal values. And so my personal values were about minimizing waste. And this is why I was able to turn this, to make this beautiful chair from inkjet cartridges. And that really set the whole scene for Close the Loop. I decided at that time that I was starting Close the Loop, registered it that year in 1998, and based off the brand promise of zero waste to landfill, which was very naive indeed, but it did become the foundation stone and the driver of much innovation. So this morning, I'm going to share some of the hurdles along this journey, and we're also going to explore some strategies for success that have worked for me. And Scott did such an amazing job of setting the scene. I'll just touch very briefly on the elements of a circular economy that are very important to our Close the Loop business. And some people say these are the three pillars of a circular business model. Designing out waste, number one, and designing products for reuse, and then designing products for end of life. And I'm going to explain to you how Close the Loop is involved in that design stage, as well as we take advantage, if you like, and reward those customers who design their products for end of life thinking, because we can extract more value at the end of life. Circularity, keeping products in use for as long as possible. When that product reaches the end of its life, let's keep the materials in use. And then when those materials in their current form are no longer of value, let's keep the atoms and molecules in circulation for longer. Regeneration. Okay, a good circular economy business is one where the planet and society is better for having had that business operate in it. And that, I believe, is a sign that you're on the right track. If society is genuinely benefiting in numerous ways, it might be biodiversity regeneration, it might be human regeneration. But if the society is benefiting from having your business in it, I think you can then call yourself a circular economy business. I do have a little bit of news for everybody, which is very exciting, and it's what I call a circular integration. We've all heard of vertical integration as a growth strategy for business. Well, Close the Loop is doing a circular integration. I'm not sure if that term's been picked up yet, but we developed it to explain to brokers and investors in this model what we're doing. And in this case, we have partnered with a packaging company. We have merged officially with that packaging company. And together, we are now the Close the Loop group, and we're going to market with a circular economy offering. And we already recycle plastics, particularly mixed soft plastics. Now we're able to manufacture soft plastic packaging as well. So we'll be able to demonstrate plastic to plastic in soft plastic film for packaging purposes, as well as continue all of our other aspects of our business, including our core business to date, which has been the collection and recycling of imaging supplies. This is how our business started, and today we are the largest collector and recycler of imaging supplies in the world. And we have now duplicated our model 10 years ago into the US. Bottom right, that's our factory in Hebron, Kentucky, just on the outskirts of Cincinnati. And we've also opened a division, in fact, bought a competitor who named their company Closed the Loop after hearing me speak at a conference in Vegas many years ago. So we're now happily the owners of that business, and we work very closely together with Closed the Loop in Europe. The programs that we run, cartridge waste and collection is one of them, imaging consumables. But we're also now collecting batteries. Because we have 40,000 collection sites all around Australia, that means we have a lot of people who trust us, who trust our zero waste to landfill brand promise, who trust our data capture and reporting, verified reporting. So we've decided to leverage that infrastructure and that trust into collecting batteries, and we then pass those batteries on to expert recyclers of batteries who may not be as good as we are at collecting. And this is a theme for my presentation today, is collaboration, a very common term that I'm sure every one of us here has heard before, but putting collaboration into action requires a level of emotional intelligence that doesn't come naturally to business. So this is one area that Close the Loop works hard to develop, and that collaboration comes with trust. We're also looking at power tools. We're doing very large scale trials at the moment to improve our operational side of our business to be able to extract the most value that we can and keep the output streams like the plastics and the metals separate from each other for highest value reuse. Cosmetics, we've been in this space for 10 years. We run back to Mac. Mac Cosmetics is a division of Estee Lauder. We run their take back program in Australia and have done for 10 years. And recently we have been funded by the Australian government to prepare and develop a product stewardship program for cosmetics in Australia. And we've had the great fortune of enjoying the wisdom of Scott and his team at KPMG in Australia to help us put that program together. And we will be very proudly announcing at the end of that project the ability to create a product stewardship program for all brands in Australia. Soft plastics take back, I mentioned before. I'm going to explain more detail about that. And then e-waste recycling, but specific types of e-waste, things like vacuum cleaners and the power tools and plastics from e-waste. I'll explain more in a second. Here's something really interesting, that the concept of the circular economy was introduced to me by our very first customer. Customer number one is a proud Japanese company, Ricoh, and Ricoh have what they call the Comet Circle. And the Comet Circle, you can see down here in tiny letters, copyrighted in 1994. Now, I would think that this is one of the earlier versions of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation butterfly diagram. This really does explain how Ricoh have been thinking for a very long time with this Comet Circle model. And the Comet Circle has 5 key concepts. Determine and reduce environmental impact at all stages. So determine, measure, quantify, then reduce environmental impacts at all stages of your product lifecycle, which includes everything you see on this diagram. Priority on inner loop recycling. Now, this is a theme that's current today. So the inner circle here is maintenance. And Scott mentioned, we need to keep products in service for longer. Ricoh knew that. Next circle is sorting and disassembly for the reuse of products. The next one is reuse of parts. So you disassemble the machine and reuse those parts. And then you get into material cycle. So the outer loops are less desirable, but at the moment, because design for end of life is not heavily adopted by manufacturers of electronics products, unfortunately, we do need to utilize these outer circles. And when Scott talks about the waste hierarchy, there's a reason that recycling is at the bottom. That's because it's the base of the hierarchy and it's the biggest volume of material that we need to deal with until we really execute better on the circular economy and we can get the larger volumes up into reuse and repair. I like number 5, partnerships at every stage and share environmental information. You know, a couple of years in to Close the Loop, we had many global brands as our customers. Some Japanese like Toshiba, Kyocera, Konica Minolta. Others American like Xerox Corporation and Hewlett-Packard. But what I found about Ricoh is their willingness to share information about things like technical data sheets was superb and really helped us understand what raw materials we're dealing with. That's a very important point. Tonoplast. Scott mentioned before, this is a technology that we've developed in order to reuse the toner powder in toner cartridges and toner bottles. Remember before I said that the zero waste to landfill brand promise has driven a lot of innovation at Close the Loop. Well, we went round and round in circles. We had above ground landfills. We had all sorts of challenges trying to build a market that was suitable for our toner powder. And as our business grew, the volume of toner powder grew. Toner powder is a very high quality polymer. You would think it would be easy to find a home, but it's small particle size and its other physical and mechanical properties means that there was no obvious reuse application. You couldn't use it back as toner because a lot of it had already been used. So it had passed by the drum and it was ended up in the waste hopper of these cartridges, and it had lost its electrostatic charge. So it was no use, again, as toner powder. We started off by using it as a black master batch product, and then developed very proudly an application to improve the performance of asphalt and reduce the carbon footprint of asphalt. This 10-year overnight success is now really starting to take traction in Australia, as government procurement guidelines really encourage the use of products like Tonerplast on major road projects as well as council projects. And you will have the pleasure of hearing from George Osborne from the City of Hume soon. And George and his team have been a huge support, laying over 20,000 tonnes a year for the last 3 years of asphalt, including Tonerplast, which has given all the other councils in Australia a precedent and something to gain their confidence to be able to use this product. This picture in the middle down here is our very first road, Rayfield Avenue in Melbourne. The picture on the bottom right is the latest form of Tonerplast. So it's a pellet. It looks like a plastic pellet, and it flows beautifully throughout the asphalt plant that we supply. Okay, we talked about soft plastics, but I'm now going to give you a little bit more detail about the mixed soft plastics in Australia. We get plastics from a program called Red Cycle, which is a collection for these soft plastics at every supermarket, major supermarket in Australia. Those plastics are returned to our facility, and we first do a manual sort because we find, usually by mistake, contamination in here, like coins and even bigger, stranger things. So we separate manually first, then we shred, then the material comes up into a 3-stage process of rehomogenizing that material. And we repolymerize, we blend with recycled oils and our recycled toner powder in order to produce that finished product, which is then bagged and shipped all over Australia to reduce the carbon footprint and improve the performance of these asphalt roads. Thankfully, we've recently received a full approval by the Victorian State Road Authorities in order to use Tonerplast in major road projects. Now, we're talking serious volumes because we've been approved to use Tonerplast in the base layers as well as the surface layers. Not the actual layer that you drive on yet, but most roads are 3 to 4 layers anyway, particularly highways. So we're in the base and the surface layer. The exciting thing about this is that we've been able to prove with independent testing that the adoption of Tonerplast increases the life of that asset. Now, if you can increase the life of an asset that is very heavily carbon intensive, then you can reduce the carbon footprint of that asset per year over the life of that asset. Other features and benefits include improved resistance to deformation. So you get less of a tendency for any rutting or any potholes, improved resilience to higher temperatures. So as we look at climate resilient strategies, everybody's very interested in the ability of Tonerplast to improve the performance of that road under high temperature environmental conditions. Now, this is not new. Polymers have been used in roads for over 40 years. What is new is the use of recycled plastics. What was needed is a determination, a single-minded determination to get the job done and to impact on the specifications, which still are the biggest barrier to entry, because you have engineers who believe in their heart that they're doing the right thing by continuing with a very prescriptive formulation for a road. Well, it's worked for 40 years. Why would I change it now? Type behavior, as opposed to the new specifications we've been pushing for, which are performance-based. If you can prove that you can get the performance, and if you can prove that the road's going to last for longer, well, then do it however you like. That's our strategy. And that's how we've been able to get the use of recycled plastics into these roads. Very, very proud. We make another product called R-Flex from mixed soft plastics, no toner powder in here, for a wide range of applications, because the customers who want the soft plastics collected are all the big food brands, from Nestle down to some white rice and some of the smaller ones. So they all want to be able to have that program be successful. And the single biggest risk to that program is if we don't build resilient end markets for products of recycled content. And I can almost hear my friend Dave Hodge nodding in agreement, because this is our biggest challenge. We can come up with the ideas and we can come up with the strategies and we invest our hard-earned into the circular economy. But if people aren't buying products of recycled content, then we're really struggling. But I think Dave will agree with me, that's really changing. Some of the policy drivers I'm going to skip past and leave that to other people that are coming after me. But in Australia, I want you to know that we have good momentum now, good momentum, and policies that we are adhering to, that we need to adhere to. And the most of the momentum as far as close the loop is concerned comes from government mandated procurement policy, which includes statements like, if not recycled content, why not? So you've got to default to recycled content, and if not, why not? Okay. Some of the hurdles, I mentioned our zero waste to landfill brand promise, and that caused us all sorts of challenges along the way, including these above ground landfills where we had to stockpile materials until we came up with the technical solution. Toner dust, toner powder is highly explosive. This is one small section of our line in Kentucky. It is very sophisticated to take away the potential for toner powder to create an electrostatic charge and then explode. It's one of the most explosive materials on the planet because of its particle size and its ability to carry a charge. We've had multiple deflagrations, which nearly put us out of business. I mean, if I'd injured anyone, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And so luckily we've been able to avoid that. Some of it was luck, I've got to be honest. Some of the other hurdles, and again, back to our zero waste to landfill brand promise, our biggest customer by volume and revenue over the journey has been HP. Because they love us and we've got this brand promise, they come to us with the most difficult technical challenges like large volume inkjet cartridges that have not been considered. The end of life has never been considered when they were made. So we've had to, in partnership with HP, develop machines to mechanically separate these raw materials and get them ready for recycling. And the inks, we've had to develop a range of writing instruments and flexographic printing applications. We've won many awards for doing this, but we've really had to think outside the box and move forward with a positive attitude to this. Branding was a big problem at the start for Close the Loop. Nobody knew Close the Loop, let alone what it meant 20 years ago. So we took what is now a very good decision, proven to be, partnered with Planet Ark. They have a trusted brand in Australia. They're a not-for-profit environmental foundation. They are now custodians of the Australian Circular Economy Hub, Scott mentioned earlier, a fantastic initiative packed full of resources. Please, I urge you to look at that website and go and check out the resources there. And we've had a long-standing 18-year relationship building the brand Cartridges for Planet Ark together. And now it is, by volume and popularity, the most popular, the most well-known voluntary product stewardship program in Australia. This one's a little personal, and it talks about as the business grows, you get a lot more people surrounding the business, and you have to stay the course and not falter, not bow to comments like, well, that's not commercially viable, when you get the bean counters coming to you with zero waste to landfill not being commercially viable. Just stick to our guns. I'm going to push forward quickly to my last two slides because we're out of time, but I have, in researching for this event, I've come up with a fantastic saying or theory or philosophy. Sanpo Yoshi, I'm sure my pronunciation is not good. I'll get Scott to help me out there in a minute if it's not right, but it really, to me, typifies a circular economy, because if the transaction is good for the seller and good for the buyer and good for society, then that is, in essence, Sanpo Yoshi. And for me, if we can do transactions with our global customers that are good for them, good for the company, and good for society, we are embodying circular economy. I'll move on to my last slide, and I will thank Scott for inviting me, and thank all of you patient listeners for hearing me out. But I would also like to introduce one of the world's and one of Japan's oldest companies, Kongo Gumi, who is also now a new inspiration for me. Absolute magnificent workmanship, 1,800 years. I think, unfortunately, now they may have been bought by a larger organization, so they've lost their autonomy. But what a wonderful legacy. And the reason I think this company has lasted 1,800 years is because it is good for society. Building beautiful architectural structures like this, embodying carbon in the wood, in the timber, and having them last for thousands of years. Wow. To me, that's giving back to society. Thank you, everybody. Arigato. Thank you, Scott. And I'll join you all for the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. It was great because there are elements, having heard you speak many times, there are new elements that you talked about today that I had no idea of. It's just fascinating, the initial stages of Close the Loop with this plastic chair. Did it sell? Did it commercially?
No, we didn't go that far, Scott. It was a demonstration, and it really did do its job. And it's still at RMIT, I believe, that chair.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, if I can just remind you all, if you have some questions, please, or comments, please pop it into the chat box. もし日本の方でももし日本語の質問あるいは意見があればやはりそのチャットボックスの方に入れてください。And we will try to get to them. And if you don't give us questions, then I get to play in my own sandbox. By the way, Steve, check this out. I brought it all the way to Japan. I don't know if you can see that. This is the Rflex product. You gave me a sample, many months ago, and I brought it all the way to Japan. So there we go.
Well done, Scott.
Yep, still promoting you. Whilst I'm waiting for questions or comments in the chat box, I actually have quite a few, but maybe I should start with the one that is most important for those of us that are in Japan and that are looking for strategies to implement a more effective circular economy. What's your advice? How should Japanese, let me say this another way. What should Japanese companies be asking Japanese policymakers to do in order to provide the support that they need to succeed?
I think that procurement is number one. I have found, for Close the Loop at least, that government procurement policy has been the single most important thing to helping us grow our circular economy business. So if there are businesses that have the opportunity to lobby, or groups of policymakers that want to drive change, in Australia, government is the single largest purchaser of goods and services by far. I assume that's the same in Japan, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, so why not get the single largest purchaser of goods and services to lead by example and ask everybody who is a procurement professional that is a public servant, if not, why not? If not recycled content, why not? And write that into policy.
Now, you've, in addition to the circular procurement, you've also experienced, in particular with the Reconofault project, you've experienced a significant amount of, how can I say this, hesitation over wishing to use the product out of either safety concerns or concerns about changing a product that's already known to a new product. Do you have any advice for strategies that can help to sort of expedite these types of projects?
Yes, and my first point is to collaborate at all costs with experts, because no one company can impact an entire supply chain. I haven't seen it yet anyway. There might be an exception to that last comment. But I know for Close the Loop, when we wanted to develop an asphalt additive, we quickly understood we're not an asphalt company. We need one. And we spent an inordinate amount of time developing that relationship in Australia, thankfully, with a very progressive company called Downer. And Downer opened their arms to us and took us under their wing because they're enormous compared to Close the Loop. But what they loved was our enthusiasm, our passion, and the drive and the nimble way that we could work. So partnering Downer as an asphalt company. And then most recently, we've partnered with the civil contractors that employ the asphalt companies to make the major road projects. Because no point being a partner of an asphalt company if it's the civil contractors that choose which asphalt company they're going to work with. So that would be my best advice, is to employ people on your teams that love other people, that get on well with other people, that are infectious with their attitude, so that can pull these relations. I mentioned before, the circular economy requires a different level of emotional intelligence that is common in business. This is the type of person you need to look for, can gain the trust of their supply chain partners. Did that address the question?
Yes, I believe so. Thanks, Steve. Mito-san asks, from the perspective of researchers, so she's interested in learning from and monitoring the progress and the development of Australian government policy. Is there any particular websites that you've found in your dealings to be useful in helping you to keep up to date?
With Australian government policy, first of all, thanks for the question. I'm probably not the right person to answer that. I know Scott would be far better than I, but if I can say my piece, what I do is I keep very close to events like this, and I try and pick the global trends in policy, because we have a business in US and another one in Europe. But in Australia, I'm trying to think, maybe if I may, because I'm here all day, I can post a few things in the chat to address that.
Wonderful.
But I do, again, point you back to the Australian Circular Economy Hub website. And I know Maddie's here today too. And I'm pretty sure, Scott, it's acehub.org.au. Am I correct?
Yes. And I believe that Haley has actually put the link into the chat box, so you just go and have a look in the chat.
Thank you, Haley. That would be the best resource that I could recommend.
Tobias Kloss, oh, by the way, to those that are in Europe, thank you so much for joining us. I can't even imagine what time it is now there. It's got to be close to midnight. Tobias has asked, what do you think? Is it easier today to have some of the projects that you've been running than it was in the 1990s, and how can we get more of this going in other parts of society?
Oh, thanks, Tobias. Absolutely easier today. No doubt about it. We've got the perfect storm brewing for circular economy uptake by industry and government, by academia, and by individual citizens. We can't not embrace the circular economy for all the reasons Scott pointed out before. So now I can basically talk to any company and get their interest related to circular economy, whether they're initiating it now or don't realize that they soon will be. Now is the time to be in circularity. So Tobias, I couldn't express more strongly that now is the time, and it's going to get, well, not easier, but it's going to get more fruitful. It's going to be more, if you like, easier is a good word, I suppose. It's going to be easier to engage on circularity. I don't know a major company that is not willing to talk about this. Now, you've still got to get your pitch right, and you've got to model it right economically.
The circular tide lifts all boats.
Yes. Let's hope it looks like
Let's one final question just before we switch. Haley Jarek is asking, what social challenges have you experienced in Australia and the United States in regard to the circular economy that maybe Japan could benefit from?
Well, thanks, Haley. I'm trying to think of social challenges. I guess behaviour change would be a social challenge. Behaviour change in as much as keeping waste streams sorted at the source, which means in the home. For us, using large volumes of soft plastics, we want to make sure, for example, that soft plastics doesn't get too contaminated with food waste and things. So that would be one. I think that this may be a social one, Haley. It's about workers being interested in working for companies that are in line with their personal values. I notice now young people are very, very interested and proactive, reaching out to close the loop. Have you got any jobs? Can I work for you? Who else do you know that does this? I'm not happy working where I am. So that's a huge social trend that I see, in that circularity is attracting good people.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I do hope that you can stay for as long as you can, or pop in and out throughout the day. I'm just noting in chat, there's been some fantastic questions as well, Steve. And if you wouldn't mind just popping in, I'm sure that those questions that we couldn't attend to, people would love to hear your opinions and insights on. So, as always, thank you so much, and it's great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Scott.
And I haven't forgotten.
Love it.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Great. Okay, folks. Well, shifting gears a bit. So we're moving from materials reprocessing to a manufacturing setting, and our next speaker is Mr. Peter Padromos. Peter, I've had the great pleasure of being able to observe the developments of Eagle Lighting in the circular economy space as Peter has pushed this forward over the last at least a year or so with real aplomb and vigor, amongst other things. And I'm sure he'll address this in his talk. But he's reached out to the Cradle to Cradle organization to look at certifying some of his products, and that is a difficult process that, when it gets done, it will serve as one of the early examples of Australian companies that are undertaking this level of commitment to the circular economy. In other words, just because he's doing this, it is going to move markets and change other companies' thoughts. So it's a great pleasure, as always, to have him at these types of events. You're going to see, just how broadly he views the circular economy and how he clearly understands that it is a strategy that is worth pursuing. So it is a great pleasure, Peter, to have you once again today, and thank you for coming. The floor is all yours.
Scott, thank you very much, and appreciate the invitation, and good morning to everyone in Japan, and good afternoon to everyone in Australia. And what a hard act to follow it is after Steve's amazing presentation. Like Scott said, today I'd like to take you through our journey, or the rise of our circular economy over the last 12 months. Eagle Lighting has been manufacturing light fittings for the past 50 years, but in the last 12 months, the sustainability / circular economy has really come home here at Eagle Lighting. We've made quite a few changes, and but not just myself, but it's many people here at Eagle Lighting that have made this happen. So I'll just take you through my presentation. Who is Eagle Lighting? We're a company that's been in Australia, manufacturing here in Melbourne for the past 50 years, creating bespoke custom lighting solutions for the Australian and New Zealand market. We pride ourselves in offering affordable, yet the most innovative lighting solutions throughout Australasia, with optimal performance and value for money. But basically, at the moment, we're manufacturing 100% of our products are LED. and in LED offering the most energy lighting solutions as well. We're a member of the Fagerholt Group, approximately 4,500 people worldwide, manufacturing lighting solutions everywhere. The products that we manufacture go into the following applications areas. So when we talk about commercial lighting, we're manufacturing majority of our products for the modern office. And we'd like to see what the modern office is going to look like in the years to come, as that's an area that's constantly evolving, especially on the now that we're talking about post-pandemic. Healthcare is one of the strongest points of Eagle Lighting. I'd say that we're in almost 100% of the hospitals throughout Australia and New Zealand. Not only hospitals, but aged care facilities as well, mental health, secure facilities as well. Education is another application area that Eagle Lighting is involved in. One of the cradle products that we're currently in the process of getting certified is in that education area, as well as critical infrastructure, transport and custodial, retail, exterior lighting, industrial and distribution, data centres throughout Australia and New Zealand. How do we do this? It's not one or two people, it's 140 people. So when you partner up with Eagle Lighting, you've got the backing of 140 people offering you the lighting solutions that we offer. When we talk about our product, it is designed, it is tested and manufactured here in Australia with very minimal amount of products that we're importing from low-cost countries. As mentioned earlier, our manufacturing facility is located here in the great city of Hume in Melbourne, and we've got distribution or sales offices throughout Australia, New South Wales, Canberra, Queensland, Western Australia and New Zealand. We have our own in-house innovative engineering team offering R&D, custom lighting solutions, but they also run our laboratory, and we also conduct our own in-house safety testing. Further to that, once we've developed our products, we also offer a lighting service, lighting design service to all of our clients, where we can actually take our clients' layouts and integrate our light fittings into their building situations, offering not only a innovative lighting solution, but a lighting solution that rolls out through the entire building space. The sort of machinery that we have here at Eagle Lighting, again, second to none. Laser cutting equipment. We have multiple turrets, automatic robotics Salvagnini panel folders, CNC turrets, brake press, running a 5S lean manufacturing philosophy, and we have our own powder coat, in-house powder coat line. Over the past 12 months, we've gone through a bit of a change. We've re-looked at our values, our core values. We looked at our branding and our new promise. Our promise to our customers here in Australia and New Zealand is better lighting for people and planet. So when we talk about innovative lighting solutions, it's about how do we make this happen? How do we make better lighting for people and our planet? Well, it started off 5 years ago in 2017, we were accredited to the 3 accreditations you can see: ISO accreditation, ISO 9001, Quality Management System, ISO 14001, Environmental Management System, as well as the recent ISO 45001, OH&S Management System. The philosophy behind ISO accreditation for us here at Eagle Lighting is continuous improvement. It's the Kaizen approach, that every day we come up with our procedures or processes, whether it's our quality system or checking processes, or it's our manufacturing techniques or the way we design our products. It's always looking, measuring and assessing, are we doing the right thing? How are we tracking and readjusting? Continuous improvement. And that is what the philosophy of ISO accreditation is. And again, 5 years ago, environmental, it's something that we've been reviewing and tracking our environmental footprint that we put out. Like Scott mentioned earlier, it was about 12 months ago we undertook the Circular Advantage course. That's when I first met Scott. Thank you. What a great time it was. It really started, as mentioned earlier, we've got the ISO accreditation. We've been working with sustainability and environmental aspects for quite a while. but it gave us an opportunity of looking at and understanding what circularity means, what the circular economy means, what it truly means to become sustainable. And the program that Scott and the City of Hume, together with the City of Kingston, offered gave us the opportunity to develop our own roadmap. So myself and my colleague Benjamin Chen developed a roadmap that won the Circular Champion for 2020, and that was a great honour. And that was the catalyst that really started to transform our business. And that's where we sat down, we looked at, what is our footprint? How much energy are we actually using? And what is it that we can do to reduce that? And that's something that, the leadership team here at Eagle Lighting, we've invested in a 100 kilowatt solar panel system. It's actually in the process of getting installed right now as we speak. This solar panel system will reduce our CO2 emissions by over 13%. Emitting reducing 132 tons of CO2, which is equivalent to 40 cars and 25 homes in our local area. Again, when we're talking about resources, water is the one that is, a lot of times left aside. Everyone talks about electricity, but we partnered up with WSP Consultants to do a water audit on our business to assess the amount of water that we're using, how we're using it, and what is it we can do to reduce our water, the amount of fresh water that we actually use. So we've got a system that we've integrated into our our paint line, where we're reutilising and regenerating the water so we can reuse the water for almost up to 6 months before we release it into the drainage system. And in the drainage system, again, we've partnered up with City West Water, where we've got a trade waste agreement where we clean and refilter the water, allowing it to be put through into the drainage system. But through this water audit, it gave us the opportunity to relook at, how can we use more recycled water into the powder coat facility? And that's what in the process that we're also doing, installing digital flow meters into the powder coat line, understanding the amount of water that's coming in and going out of the system, but also connecting our roof system and capturing water, rain tanks, and putting it back into the paint line. A similar graphic in the middle to what Steve presented earlier. Sustainability is really the amalgamation of social, environmental, and economic. There's no real use of being the most environmentally friendly business but not turning a profit. But saying that we're the greatest business but not really contributing to the social viability of our communities as well. And that's what we believe true sustainability is, when we're working harmoniously with all three of these sectors. So if you focus to the top right-hand side of the screen, well, that's where we started with our corporate social responsibility, where we undertook a B Corp certification to better understand our business, but also as one of the requirements for Cradle to Cradle from the social aspect was to undertake a B Corp certification. That was something that we completed in May of this year with a rating of 93%, which is fantastic. It took us through an understanding of corporate governance, a lot of questions auditing on how we work with our people, also how we work with the local communities, understanding our environmental footprint, carbon footprint, but also understanding who our customers are and how we deal with them. I think the B Corp certification was a great way, and that was at the start of the year, of understanding and then creating further projects where we did have deficiencies to improve our business, again, using the Kaizen approach to not to settle with where we're at, but always to continuously improve our business. And hence the reason why we partnered up again with another sustainability auditing business called EcoVadis. And we're in the process, we've just finalised our submission to that assessment as well. So now we'll basically have two independent businesses auditing our Eagle Lighting promise of better lighting for people and planet. But one of the things that we took away from both of these certification is, how do we improve what we offer to the local community. Hence, we partnered up with a company called Workways, and we're now offering employment opportunities for people with disadvantages or disabilities within our community. And that's one of the greatest things that I'm so proud of at Eagle Lighting, of the changes that we've made, not just to be a profitable business or environmental business, but to truly make a difference in people's lives by giving people with disadvantages an employment opportunity here in our factory. If you have a look to the bottom left-hand side of the screen as well, the SDGs, we've partnered up with a sustainability consultancy company called ThinkStep, and they basically conducted a workshop with 15 people within our business, but also with some of our largest clients throughout Australia and New Zealand, to get a better understanding of who we are and to devise our corporate social responsibility. So we've, at the cornerstone of our framework of sustainability, the following SDG 7, 11, 12, and 13. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. We've also partnered up again with ThinkStep to develop our responsible procurement framework, as well as the Cradle Cradle certification. The responsible procurement framework was basically, how do we control the products, that all the components that we purchase into Eagle Lighting? And as part of the Cradle Cradle certification, we really had to do a deep dive into the products, into the componentry, into the material health, material utilization, to get a real great understanding, an in-depth understanding of the products that we're utilizing within all of our product components that we're utilizing within our products. So we sat down with thought to ourselves, how do we, again, continuous improvement, Kaizen approach, how do we take this step further? How do we integrate responsible procurement? Because there's a lot of companies out there saying that they've got a social responsibility, a social procurement policy, or a great responsibility procurement policy. But then how do we hold ourselves accountable? And here at Eagle Lighting, we're integrating our responsible procurement policy into the ISO 9001 quality system. And this framework will be integrated as part of our supply management system, enabling the independent auditors to assess what we're doing, to assess our suppliers. So again, we've created a framework of questions, a code of conduct for our suppliers, and all the questions are really based on not just 4 SDGs, but in this case, we've added the extra SDG 10 to reduce inequalities, to ensure that the people that we are working with have modern slavery policies in place, are doing the right things, are paying their workers the right wages, etc., and offering great employment opportunities. As mentioned earlier, Cradle Cradle, we're in the process of finalising our very first product for certification. We're possibly around 4 weeks away from launching this product into the marketplace. And a quick overview of what Cradle Cradle is basically a world where safe materials and products are designed and manufactured in a prosperous circular economy to maximise the health and well-being of people and planet. Again, a great way of creating the better lighting for people and planet. To achieve this certification, it's independently audited out of Europe. We will be the first lighting company in the Southern Hemisphere, not just in Australia or New Zealand, but in the Southern Hemisphere to have this amazing certification. The certification deep dives and does an assessment on the material health of the product, looking at the chemical compositions of every single component that goes into our light fitting, but also looking at the reutilization, similar to what Steve was talking about, how easy it is to reuse these materials or the components in the future when it potentially comes to end of life. But also looking at how we use renewable energy and of course, improving operational energy efficiencies within our business, as well as social fairness and water stewardship. The Cradle Cradle process, basically, you can see on the left-hand side the process from step 1 through to 4. But the process did a deep dive. It's not just about having the right materials, ensuring that they're not on the European banned list, the RoHS banned list, but it's also looking at the way we've designed the product. It starts with the design, ensuring we've designed the waste out of the product. For example, if we have waste, all of a sudden we've got a failure. That's not good enough. And again, looking at our sustainability footprint, minimizing the amount of waste that we have, but looking at design for assembly, design for disassembly, and looking at every single production process throughout our factory. It looked at the material. We had to provide evidence of the materials that we're using, but also it wasn't just as simple as providing an MSDS to get the certification. We then had to have basically a stat and deck provided from our suppliers to give over to Switzerland to prove that they are backing Eagle Lighting and they are promising to deliver what they do so in the MSDS. We also had to do a full analysis of our production process, understanding every single input and output that our light fittings go through, the input and output of our lasers, our turrets, brake press, our utilities. Every aspect was analysed. And when we talk about analysed, it was conducted as an independent audit where someone actually came out from cradle to cradle to certify our building and our manufacturing processes. We also looked at like I mentioned earlier, the water and energy use and all the resources that we're using, but also to ensure that we've got the relevant policies and strategies in place. So that way we're not talking about, and when I talk about policies, for example, creating a take-back policy. And that's something that we'll be launching in the next few weeks, where we'll have a formal take-back policy to ensure that at the end of life, if the product cannot be reused anymore, we will take our product back and we'll partner up. And we've got partners throughout Australia and New Zealand, and we'll be launching that in the next few weeks to come. One of the biggest things that's changed our business within the cradle cradle, again, as mentioned earlier, was the social fairness and understanding how we can be a better partner for people within our community here at Eagle Lighting. Well, the product that we have created is called the Educo. And the Educo is really designed for the education facilities, whether it's universities or kindergartens, primary schools, secondary schools, really suitable throughout Australia and New Zealand. It is one of the first products in this market segment to be UGR 19 compliant. Also designed with, recyclable products, designed to be taken back and broken down and recycled. But as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, it's also designed in a way where we can upgrade this product. It can be easily maintained or brought back and updated and recycled and broken down to nth degree. Well, what's the next step? Again, using that Kaizen approach. Well, we've reached this point over the last 12 months. Well, we don't like to take it easy. Well, what's the next step that we're going to do? And our next step is the life cycle assessment. So the top left-hand side, you can see there, we've got the cradle-cradle technical cycle for service products. And that's the cycle of cradle-cradle, looking at the way products are produced, the product itself, the use phase, return, disassembly, and the nutrients or the components going into the light fitting itself. And really to the right-hand side, you'll see the life cycle assessment. It's quite similar to the cradle-cradle technical life cycle, but the life cycle assessment takes into account the use of the product within its environment. So it'll take an assessment of how long has a product been used? Is it being used for 1, 2, 10 years? And the impact it has on our planet. How much energy is it using over its 10-year life, etc. And it takes all of that into account. Hence the reason why you can see our love triangle down the bottom there in the middle. We've got cradle to cradle, goes hand in hand with circular economy and the life cycle assessment. And you can see there's a note from our Dr. Barbara Niebel of ThinkStep, basically saying that life cycle specific cradle cradle and circular economy are united by their approach to sustainability. A life cycle approach. When combined, these three players in sustainability form the ultimate life triangle. I guess that's our next step for Eagle Lighting, and looking forward to the future. Again, thank you very much. And that's a quick overview of what we've done here at Eagle Lighting to ensure that we create better lighting for our people and planet.
Well, Peter, it's remarkable. Every time I catch up with you, it's just another great bound forward. These are enormous initiatives. How have you found the time for all of this?
Again, like I said earlier, it's not just myself. It's our amazing engineering manager, Mark Antonello, our purchasing manager, Harry Lee, and our quality environmental manager, Mediterranean. And their teams as well. I said we need to find the time, Scott. That's our Kaizen approach of continuous improvement. We just need to work out the way and move on.
Yeah. What I was most interested in when you and your colleague Benjamin Chung were on the Circular Advantage program is how you both structured the way that you approached your strategy. Some companies chose, to do a collaborative model, but you actually chose to do a collegially competitive model where, Benjamin worked on certain elements, mostly focusing on design, I guess, and you were focusing more on the Kaizens that fits in with your wheelhouse of operations management. Do you carry that forward? Do you have the same philosophy within the organization?
Oh, of course. So the Kaizen approach is hence the ISO accreditation that we have, which is all about continuous improvement. It's not just for operations or the engineering or the production team, it's for the entire business. And that's something where we've got all facets of our business involved. We've got from upper management, middle management, from sales, our sales people are involved in the ISO accreditation, our HR departments are involved in it, marketing. Everyone is involved in ensuring our philosophies and our values are put forward.
Great. Thanks. Tobias Close asks I think a great question because it applies to the reason I think we are beginning this discussion between Australian and hopefully some Japanese firms. I know that there are some representatives that have joined us today. The question is about take back. Which is a key element to circularity. And he's asking, how can you make sure that you get your products back, and so that you can reuse it? Do you have a particular strategy that is emerging?
So at the moment, we've introduced a QR code onto the labels of our products. So that way, at any time, our clients can scan using a smartphone to scan the label within the product to understand, okay, well, this product comes from Eagle Lighting. And on that will be not only our installation sheet on how to use our product, but also the guidance with our take-back policy as well. So that way, whether it's in a year's time or 10 years' time or 15 years' time, our customers will know what to do and how to contact us.
Wow. Yeah, the similarities that you're presenting about ISO and why you are adopting so many of these types of programs. And your main point was that we do this because it forces us into a mindset of continuous improvement, which is it's remarkable. And I think back to, early days when I first came to Japan, almost over 30 years ago now. And I remember back in Japan, the mindset was, we have no resources. And because we have no resources, our critical competitive advantage is innovation. So it was, establishing that challenge, that internal challenge that, you've clearly been working on within your own organization as well. Mm-hmm. Do you have these types of internally? Do you have internal challenges that you put forward to staff? Do you have competitions? And
I was going to say, Scott, I don't think any business is perfect, and I'd love to say that we're perfect, but we're not. But hence the reason why we have the ISO accreditation and our policies and procedures to strive to perfection, to try and get there eventually, or hopefully one day. One of the things that we do have in-house, so we have a suggestion box, not only a manual handwritten suggestion box that we have in our factory lunchroom, but we've also got a digitalized version using Microsoft Teams, which enables not only the people here in Melbourne to put forward suggestions, not only on the topics of OH&S or WorkSafe policies, but whether it's a social gathering or any type of suggestion can be put forward from throughout Victoria to New Zealand to improve. And we really sit down and listen, review every single suggestion that all of our people put forward. And we've got a project team that implements these changes as well.
Terrific. My final question, if you don't mind,
Yes.
is in regards to this Workways project. I wasn't aware of it. Was this something that's new? So when did it start? And how has this impacted your organizational culture?
This happened about 3 months ago, Scott. So it's something new to our business as well. But also it's more of as I was going through the assessments of the B Corp assessment and the EcoVadis assessment, and the focus these assessments put on the social aspect, and it really made us think, not only for myself, but from the leadership team, how do we truly make a change? How do we offer the people within the city of Hume employment opportunities, or, how do we have social projects? And we found a company called Workways. We've partnered up with them, and we're now providing employment opportunity for people with disabilities. So that's something that we can take away and really be proud of what we're doing.
Wow, fantastic. Well, Peter Padromos, as always, fascinating to catch up with you. It's just, it's remarkable to see the levels of progress that you and your team are managing to put forward during a very difficult, COVID period. So, if there's any chat questions that have left unattended, if you wouldn't mind just having a peek, and if you could. I hope you can stay with us for a little while.
No, my pleasure. Thank you very much, Scott.
Now, I notice also, folks, that Steve Morris has put in his contact details. So for those in Japan who are thinking, I wonder if this Reconofault or some of the other products that Close the Loop is currently pursuing could possibly, find an ally here in Japan, please get in touch. And I guess the same will be true of Peter as well. So Peter, if you wouldn't mind maybe popping your email into the email address into the chat. They're talking about Close the Loop lighting products. It would need to be a local venture, because if you've got a take back, it's nice to have that local partner. It's a potential partnership that is pre-made for success. So please get in touch. All right. Next up is our friend from, I guess, David, you're up in northern, do I say northern Victoria or southern New South Wales? I'm not sure, but Mr. David Hodge is Managing Director of Plastic Forests. And David, if you wouldn't mind loading your slides now, and I shall introduce you. He's a self-confessed eco-industrialist. He's of course the owner and Managing Director of Plastic Forests, and he'll talk a little bit about what they do in a minute. He's passionate about rescuing soft plastics, and I think we first met 2 or 3 years ago at a presentation, and it's wonderful to see how the product array has been sort of expanding since then, and the awards, as we're seeing here on the lead slide, just keep coming in. It's a very unique operation in that there are not many operations in Australia that are capable of reproducing soft plastics. So it's a niche area. For those of us in Japan, these are the types of technologies we should be looking at, because the process of simply burning soft plastics is an incredible resource waste, and I'm sure that David will talk more about that as well. So without further ado, David Hodge, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. And can you see the screen?
We can indeed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Today, we specialise in soft plastics, so we are very much the soft guys. There's only one product that we have in our lineup that has a rigid polymer in it, and that is required to make an Australian standard product. So everything we're about to show you today is actually soft plastics. But we're probably one of the most award winners in Australia. We've got a lot of innovation. I suppose there's probably half a dozen processes, technical processes that we've developed that are only within our shed. We haven't patented it for a long story there, but not making it public. So why are we doing what we are doing? I suppose this journey started some 20, 30 years ago. And this particular quote I used to have on the back of my study door, and only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish has been caught, we will realize that we cannot eat money. And this is a quote from Chief Seattle, which the city of America, Seattle, where Bill Gates lives, some 130 years ago. So in 130 years, we're making incredibly slow progress. We've also been very fortunate that we've appeared on numerous television shows, a lot of press, a lot of radio. I'm fairly outspoken. I'm very committed to seeing circularity and in particular soft plastics find a desirable end-of-life situation as opposed to currently where the majority of it is either buried or landfilled. To give you the size of where we are, we're at the green cross there. So we're sort of just up from Victoria and just south in New South Wales. And that's the size of Japan. So Australia is around 21 times larger than Japan. The reason why I say that is because of logistics. When it comes to soft plastics, rule one is that it must be baled and consolidated before we can be able to look at transporting it, and particularly the size of Australia. We've built the largest vertically integrated soft plastic plant in Australia. We've got a capacity of around 8,000 tonnes per annum. That's an aerial shot of it, of the facility. We can sort of see down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the Hume Freeway, which is the main freeway between Sydney and Melbourne. We've got approximately 6,500 square metres of sheds and another 6,500 square metres of hard stand. Now, to get a visual representation of what 1,000 tonnes of plastic looks like, and we've built the largest capacity of soft plastics in Australia, so we can do 8,000 tonnes, so it's approximately 8 times this volume. Now, this is one of the most important things when it comes to circularity, and unfortunately everything does boil down to money, and that is from this famous line, "Show me the money." So what's happening with the supply of plastic? Now, this is an aerial shot in America, and it is showing the fracking. So in the last 10 years, there's been approximately $120 billion US put into fracking facilities. Now, there's also been, currently, there's an increase of around 40% of the current global plastic production that's being developed. So that's going to be another 120 million tonnes of more plastic coming into the marketplace. This is the size of these facilities. They are absolutely enormous, and they generally focus on one polymer. We can see here, this is one of the largest building plants, facilities going on in America right now. It's Shell's new polyethylene plant. There's some 10,000 to 12,000 workers. It started a number of years ago. Donald Trump mentioned it in relation to one of the strategic projects that are going on in America right now. And to give you, again, the size of the operation, they ordered 3,000 railway carriages just to be able to transport resin from the facility to their customers. So this is an enormous amount of new virgin polymers that are being thrust into the marketplace because of the low cost, or in particular, because of the high amount of ethylene that comes from the fracking in America. So where do we get our plastics that Plastic Forests specialises in? Because we're located in the bush in Australia, we have a number of agricultural inputs. We can see on the left that this is silage, what we call silage film, which is a low gauge film, very thin, but it's used to keep the food food fresh longer, and we can see the picture on the right of what it looks like at our factory. We also deal with post-production plastic films. So again, soft plastics is what we specialize in, and the food industry is the next stop. Post-industrial, we can sort of see a picture of, this is the stretch wrap, which is used around pallets in particular. And again, end of life. This is a very easy film to recycle because it hasn't come in contact with any dirt or any fiber in on the farm. And we can see an aerial shot there down the bottom right-hand corner of the rear yard waiting to be processed coming into our shed. The final soft plastic that we specialise in is post-consumer. You would generally find these plastics in your home. So this would be what bread would come in, or what cheese would come in, or what a range of foodstuffs in your house. Now, why are soft plastics so hard to recycle? There's a number of reasons. One of the very first reasons is there's a lot of technology that goes into them with multi-layered films. There's up to 9 layers now have been developed, and they can be a range of different types of polymers, and it's very hard to unscramble eggs. I mean, ultimately what we'll see is, hopefully, more chemical recycling that will be able to take these fractions and be able to turn them back into food grade material. Currently, there is actually no approved mechanical means, like from the FDA in America, to be able to recycle soft plastics back into food grade soft plastics, to my knowledge. This is an electron microscope view of what soft plastics looks like. And as you can see, it's a very open matrix at this molecular level, and this allows for the contamination to be in there. And obviously, if we're making food safe products, we don't want any contaminants held within the polymers after they've been recycled. And what Steve mentioned here, the elephant in the room, to coin the expression, is that it isn't recycled until somebody buys a recycled product. We can have wonderful collection schemes. We can have wonderful aggregation. As I said, we've got this enormous facility with 8,000 tonnes. We have, and we'll talk about our product strategy, but we've got 200 to 300 odd products now that we've developed from soft plastics. So we see it upon ourselves that we've got to create wonderful, fit for purpose, engaging, beautiful products. And that's what we'll discuss now. So when it comes to one of our first products that we're very happy to have just released a little while ago, is made from agricultural plastics as well as the post-consumer and post-industrial. We've just got to ask the question, you know, once we've created this, we've spent like we saw there with the Shell facility, $1.6 billion US building a factory to make the plastic. The plastic is now in existence. So what we want to do is we want to be able to, and the key with plastic forests is that it arrives to our facility looking like it does in the bottom left-hand corner. And then what it does is that we then turn it into wonderful fit-for-purpose products. Now, this is a fence post that we call it the plus post. It looks like a plus sign, or more importantly, it probably looks more like a 4-leaf clover. It can be fully electrified. It's been tested independently to 15,000 volts. In Australia, we have obviously a lot of agriculture, and with large animals, as we can see with cattle and dairy, that the fences are electrified. And this is normally done with timber or steel with isolators, and that creates a range of problems because the isolators fall off. But we can see with our post being plastic is that it is fully insulated. So if the fence post is standing, the isolator is working. The other thing that we had to be able to achieve is that it had to be able to be driven in. So this is the way in which the posts are installed in Australia. So again, this is with soft plastic. One of the important aspects there is that little bit of a wiggle and a little bit of a shake. What that's been able to do is it's been able to reduce the damage or injury to animals that run into fence posts or run into fence lines, which we've also seen in a real live example, most recently at another property in Victoria. We can see here this next aerial view is some 18 months after the first installation. So we can see that the posts are all lovely and straight. We can also see here that the farmer put a small grass fire through it. Now, plastic obviously is combustible at a certain point, but is able to take a small amount of sustained heat, this is what they would typically experience on what they call an internal fence line in Australia, that it takes approximately 350 degrees Celsius and sustained kilowatt per square meterage to be able to make the plastic combustible. So we've been able to see that they can, because Australia obviously has quite a number of bushfires. We have a different version of this. We've actually got 3 versions. So we've got the standard version, which is used for general property. We've got this equine version, which is just being rolled out, was released in June this year. And we've had comments back that we've developed the safest horse fence post in the world. So these photos here are from an equine hospital just out of Melbourne in the Yarra Valley. And by having that flex and not having any sharp edges on the post whatsoever, that particularly with racehorses, which tend to run hard and fast in the early morning and the evening, that the horses don't injure themselves when they collide with fencing. We have a full fencing system, a full electrification system, where we've also developed square pickets instead of steel star pickets. We have what we also call droppers, and we can see that fence line there is fully electrifiable for a farmer to use. A new product which we have currently under evaluation here in Australia is our new Oyster Post, and we've developed a CN technology with this. And again, with a flexible plastic, it's going into a saltwater environment, it's going into mud and sand. Polyethylenes can float. So what we've done is that we've designed a base on this that once it's water jetted into the water, that it doesn't float away and doesn't come out. It's able to take the battering of waves from boats, from sea swell, jet skis, and the like. And this is a product which will be, once it's finished, it's a pre-market evaluation, will be launched shortly, and that's the 3rd version of our Plus Post. The other product that we've recently released is our new wheel stop. These are used in car parks, and they come in a range of funky colors. When we create a product, we want it to be engaging. We want the shape to be engaging, hence we did the Plus Post. With this particular product, we've developed this thermofusing process. So those colored strips are actually they're not recycled, they're actually virgin, unfortunately, but it's a virgin, high UV resistant, and it's thermally fused in the manufacturing process, so that it will never come off, which is one of the problems with the market leading product, which I'll show you shortly from China, with the delamination of the safety strip. We also take, not only we're going to make something beautiful, we're going to make it a wonderful, engaging shape. It's got to be fit for purpose. So we've been able to send our product off and have it tested, and it can indeed take around 60 odd Toyota Corollas, in which it can hold before it compresses flat, which is quite amazing for soft plastics. It's able to hold that compressive load. This is the market leading product in Australia. They're cheap, recycled rubber products which really don't pass the test when it comes for long life and fit for purpose. We've also developed a range of other products which we'll move through quickly before I get into some of our circular issues, circular examples. We've got a tongue and groove. We have a sheet line, so we make quite a number of different sheet products from 1 millimeters thick through to around 5 millimeters thick. This is a heavy duty edging, which is used by a number of government and council applications instead of steel. We can see this is down in a salt air environment, so it makes it a lot longer lasting than steel. We wanted to make consumer facing and consumer products And we've been able to do that with our range of garden bed kits in 3 colours and a range of sizes. We have a number of other nursery type products with root barrier and garden edging. Infrastructure is important, so we make underground polymetric cable cover. This is made to an Australian standard, Australian and New Zealand standard, and this is used extensively in solar farms, in the development of the solar farms and the protection of the assets. Profiles are not new, but we do those as well. Again, these are all made from soft plastics, and this is the square picket, again, is used also in a number of garden stakes. Something a little bit funky, we have this I-beam, this plastic I-beam, which we market and sell throughout Australia through a major, the Reece network, Reece Actrol and Metal Flex, some $14 billion business turnover. And this is a heavy duty air conditioning mount. So just to talk about 2 little quick case studies. One is a company in Australia and Sydney based, Australian Native Landscapes. They process around 400,000 tonnes of organics into products. So they're taking organic material and then it's been packaged, as we can sort of see as an example on the left there, into a 15 kilo, 20 kilo plastic bag. That is then collected, and then we manufacture garden edging out of it, and then they sell that garden edging. So it means that we're keeping their packaging material out of landfill. A publicly listed company in Australia, CSR, they're a large building materials manufacturer, and we can see here this is a heat shrink hood which goes on to their Monier division, the ceiling tiles. We take that plastic film back, and this is where we make our dunnage out of. So this is a packaging product. We can see that it's used in plasterboard application. So each one of these plastic blocks in this particular area has to hold around 1.2 tonnes. They're rated for around 15 tonnes. So they have more than enough strength. There's no splinters, there's no warping. They're UV stable. They have an incredibly long life. And the final study that we're just having a look at right now, where we're working with the New South Wales Government EPA, we're working with a number of councils. And what we're doing in particular, we can sort of see, as we mentioned before, the silage film program. This is silage film that's coming into the rear yard. And we've got a couple of farmers there that are enormously happy that they've brought their waste in and they're able to participate and buy a long-lasting fence post asset, which has got a design life of sort of 30 to 50 years. Everything we do, we want our customers to love us. So on eBay, 100% reviews, Google, 100% reviews. It means the world to us, this feedback. I'd like to thank everybody for their time this morning, and please remember that unless we've got end markets, it's talking about the circular economy is half building a bridge. It's no good till it hits the other side. Thank you, Scott.
Well, thanks so much, David. And just a reminder for those of you that might have some questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat box. David, I'd like to start, if you don't mind, by asking you, what would you say to policymakers who view soft plastics as valuable inputs into waste-to-energy plants?
Look, the way the economics work with a waste-to-energy plant, particularly in a country like Australia, which is not a cold country, so it'd be different in a Scandinavian type country where they're recovering heat as well as electricity, but in Australia there is not as much need for the heat. The way that the economics works is that you don't get enough money to create the energy. The way that a waste-to-energy plant operates economically in Australia through a gate fee. So they're charging slightly less than what the landfill rate is, and that's how the economics work. The economics do not stand up in relation to making energy. I think there is a place, but I think what we've learned from Germany in the 1980s and 1990s, from them being very early adopters, and Europe as well, that once you start on this process of waste to energy, and the world always flows to the lowest cost. So what will happen is that resources will go into that stream, and then later on, like what we've seen with Germany, 10, 20, 30 years later, where there's new technologies that have been developed, you've got the waste to energy still pulling through and sucking material which should be recycled, but it's now locked into that stream. So I think there needs to be some very strict criteria of what goes into that waste to energy. And if there's any innovation down the track, that you've got to have some escape clauses to be able to then rescue that material into new technologies as they become available in the next decades.
Now, we all know that that plastics are complicated, particularly soft plastics, as you introduced earlier. Many of them are sort of composites that are really built for order, depending on the type of product that is being wrapped in them. In your experience, are there some policy lessons that should be learned here? Like, for example, are there some unnecessary composites that are being used, or are there unnecessary synthesized materials that maybe should just be sort of ferreted out of the existing systems?
Absolutely, and we are seeing that. We're seeing the pressure in Australia. They have what they call the ARL, the Australian Recycling Label. We have APCO, which is the Australian Packaging Covenant. And what we're seeing is a push for removal of PVC, PVDC from the multi-layering. What we're not seeing is there are a number of compatibilizers that are available. Dow have a recycle-ready range of compatibilizers, and they should be introduced more widely, but they're not. I know in speaking with senior people at Amcor that they are spending a lot of time, money and resources trying to develop fit-for-purpose monostream. So you're right, the flexible packaging is the high-tech end of town. It's not like an HDPE milk bottle. It is very high-tech. It's full of different polymers. It is lightweight. It's great for a minimalisation of a finite resource like plastic. But we've just got to keep in mind that how do we do that? So look, I'm sure that there's great brains around the world and various universities and these large film manufacturers that realise that their customers, the Unilevers and the Nestlés of the world, that they want, because they're being asked for it by their customer, that they have a product which has a recyclable end of life. Unfortunately, it all is now through chemical, but the chemical recycling is, to my understanding, fairly difficult, fairly expensive, but it's the early days of chemical recycling, and we'd like to see more of that.
Now, what happens as the market moves toward bioplastics? Does this impact your operation at all?
Look, the bioplastics is a very much a wide area of good and bad, and I think what we say the flexibles is that it is, let's say 80-90% polyolefins. Now, polyolefins are the easiest ones to recycle. They're low-hanging fruit once they're collected and aggregated well. I think by putting in these bio-type plastics, that all we're going to do is, unless it's in its single maintainable stream, I think all it's going to do is it's going to contaminate a stream that's already the majority with the PE stream. So my preference would be that if they can recycle that through a specific stream, great. But if it's going to be coming into the mainstream of recycling, not just for us, but for quite a number of other recyclers that are going to come in this space, that I think it'd be best for just to keep it as polyolefins.
Right. Okay. Questions come in. Jasper Versture. I don't know, Jasper. I think I've just butchered your name. I'm sorry about that. He's asking, out of interest, do you have a strategy in place to manage end of life for your own products?
Look, the answer to that would be yes. We can recycle any of our products, and there's some other recyclers in Australia that can do as well. But what we're really trying to do is that we're trying to make products like in the background here, these fence posts. These fence posts should really be there for 50 plus years. And it's the same with whether it's our garden edging or the underground electrical cable should be there for possibly 100 years. So long as we don't create a problem with the manufacturing of them now, they will be recyclable end of life.
Great, thanks. There's often with plastics, the issue of leaching comes up, you know, and so the question that's just been posed in the chat is, are there any impacts, you know, to the surrounding environment, for example, through leaching or some of those other concerns?
Right. Well, we make sure that we only use those plastics which have that haven't been exposed to any chemicals or any petroleum type products. So there's no chemical drums or oil drums or anything like that. The types of plastics we get, as I said, have been food contact. So it's something that you've had at home, that you've actually had your bread into, that you've consumed, that's then come to us. Now, when it comes to leaching, the thing there is that, you know, we put a UV stabilizers, carbon black in them, so that they don't degrade. We've recently just got another report this morning on our wheel stop product, which is in an accelerated weather testing laboratory. So we make sure that we use the right amount of UV stabilizers to stop that breakdown of the surface. And as I said, when it comes to chemical leaching, there's been quite a number of tests just done on polyolefins, and that's what we use. And they found not to leach out, because they're embodied, you know, so in our extrusion process. So we're, you know, vertically integrated, so it comes in and leaves our factory. So it comes in, like with the photos you saw, and it leaves as a product.
Great. David, your wheel stops, the parking spot stops here in Japan, there's got to be a huge market for that. What's being used right now largely are concrete blocks. What's the sales pitch here? Like, what is the unit cost of these? And afterwards, would you be willing to pop your email into the chat box in case some aspiring entrepreneurial spirit from Japan would like to follow up with you?
Thanks for that, Scott. Yeah, look, in Australia, the Australian pricing is that it's generally around the same price as concrete. We have tried a pricing strategy where we're meeting the price of the imported Chinese rubber wheel stops, their landed price into Australia through to the wholesalers. Yes, they do containerise well. We'd love to export them up. The advantages over concrete in particular is that they're very easy to install. They're a one-man operation. They're not a heavy lift. They're able to take multiple impacts. Being soft plastics, it's a bit like the fence post. It's able to take it. It's not like a rigid plastic which suffers, say, some environmental stress cracking over a period of time. So with us being soft, it can take numerous hits, like a car driving into it. And of course, the high visibility. We've also got a sawtooth top, which reduces the slip over the top when it's wet in car parks. Yes, I'll put my details, and we'd love to hear from anybody who'd like to talk to us about importing to Japan. I'd love to do that. And the other thing which I've heard, which is a little bit down the track, is that Oyster Post, that apparently Japan has a fairly large oyster growing. They're one of the leaders in the world in oyster farming. That'd be a wonderful product again for that marketplace.
David, the University of Kyushu is in a place called Itoshima, which is famous throughout Japan for its oysters. So you'll have to come on a product mission, and which will lead us somehow to the oyster huts and a cold beer and some oysters in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you stay around a little bit longer. There might be a couple of lingering questions that pop in a little bit late. If you wouldn't mind just responding to anything that's relevant to you, and I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. All right. Last but not least, hope you're enjoying it, folks. Really great sessions. I didn't expect anything less from this group, to be honest. Okay, so our last speaker, and certainly not least, as they say, is a founder and managing director of Enable Australia, Ms. Julie McKay. Now, Julie's group, Julie, has a very strong background in development in terms of, sort of being able to spearhead, entrepreneurial developments. And interestingly, she chose at one point to go into social enterprise development. Knowing the work that she's put in and other colleagues that have gone into social entrepreneurial development, it is so much harder. And yet she has, over time, managed to cobble together a truly inspirational group, which you will talk about today. Julie is a speaker that I reach out to often when we're doing circular economy, talks, because she brings in a social element that, interestingly, Peter is now starting to contend with from Eagle Lighting. But Julie reminds us through her operations how important it is to connect the human element to the business operations that we run. So, Julie, it's, as always, great to see you. Thank you for coming, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. And how's those slides going on? Everyone good for the viewing?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let's have a quick little looky here. All right, so share that one and we should be off and running.
Yeah, just starting now. Yeah, we can see the slides.
Beautiful. All righty.
Beautiful. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. What an amazing morning we've had so far. Very happy to be here. Just before I start, I'd like to join the meeting today from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and wanted to pay my respects to existing family members of elders past, present and future. So thank you, Scott, for being the amazing circular economy champion that you are. Absolutely always amazing to hear from anything Close the Loop and Steve Morris, Eagle Lighting. Massive round of applause for all of that work that's being done, and what an amazing example of a business taking a hold of both, social outcomes and also the environmental part as well. And David, I must say, from a plastic perspective, I am a country girl, so I did get a little bit excited when I saw that fencing as well. So thank you for all the amazing work that's being done. So my job today is to talk about a more grassroots approach, one of social enterprise. And you see the photo there is Enable winning the 2019 Premier Sustainability Award. And it's just a good example of how far social enterprise is coming along in Australia, and this is in Victoria. So that's a good little intro for us. So let's talk a little bit about social enterprise at a high level. So social enterprise exists worldwide. They're relatively young still in Australia, but they really exist to create a fairer and more sustainable world. So in Australia, we define social enterprise by doing three things. This is a social trader's definition of social enterprise. So they do need to have a social impact, have a cultural or community focus where we're tackling community issues or presenting better ways of doing things, and also the environmental purpose. Secondly, you need a substantial proportion of your income from trade. And we'll talk about what Enable does in that space shortly. And thirdly, social enterprises need to reinvest profits and efforts back into their public and benevolent or community benefit. So that's a little bit about social enterprises. I guess the oldest example of a social enterprise worldwide is the charity clothing shops, quite similar to ourselves, where people donate, then they're reused and resold for benefit to the environment. Another example is beehives and gardening on city rooftops. Good example of how social enterprises can be at that micro level, but also generate some environmental impact as well. Others are saving food waste from restaurants and then providing meals to those in need. And of course, what Enable does, we take electronic waste and electronic end-of-use items and reuse and redistribute those to people in need. So Enable itself is pretty much hitting quite heavily in those three key elements of being a traditional social enterprise. And we like to think we're a really good example of doing those three things quite well. And taking a traditional business approach, which is highly commercialised, and then overlaying those three very, very important things to create social impact, environmental impact, and also economic impact by way of local jobs. So local jobs for local people and local jobs for local people in need. So just as Scott was talking earlier about taking responsibility to act like stewards in the circular economy space, we like to think that social enterprise has a role, a stewardship role in creating a worldwide movement for social impact, and hopefully in the context of circular economy initiatives. A little bit more about us. So let's talk about the issues we tackle, because social enterprise, obviously, we're built in and around supporting needs. And the first thing that we tackle is the statistic. It's not a good one in Australia, that unfortunately we rank 21 out of 29 of the OECD countries, with an appalling rate of 52% of participation rate for people with disabilities in employment. So that's a problem. That statistic has been around for a long time, and we exist to tackle that very issue by providing work and learning opportunities for people with disability. Why do we need to be doing that, focusing on employment for people with disability? Well, unemployment is a major reason for poverty, and poverty is a major reason for homelessness. So we really need to start getting in early, and employment can be a problem solver. We also work in the City of Hume, which we'll hear from George Osborne later on, and we exist to tackle the high unemployment rates in Hume itself. They're around about 60% higher than the Australian average. So there's certainly a need for Enable to be located in Hume, and also be supporting communities in need for pathways into employment. Another issue that we live and breathe for is that e-waste is one of the fastest growing waste types in Australia. So we know that through the work that we do, that we are diverting e-waste from landfill, but also it's a great opportunity, whilst that is such a massively growing sector, to start rethinking and adopting circular economy thinking in that space to reuse, repair, and repurpose all of the parts and commodities that come through our business. And last but not least, in the issues that we're tackling is in and around the importance of being a part of a community, and that sense of being part of a connected community. And I think most recently that connected communities initiatives that we're engaged in hasn't meant so much to us as during the pandemic, when we started, getting our tech repaired and refurbished and distributing out to people in need. There was a horrific, increase in access to technology caused by the pandemic. People with low income, unemployed, elderly Australians that didn't really know how to use technology, people with disability all had issues with access to technology, which we'll talk about how we tackle that very shortly. Now, you talk about the challenges of the circular economy, or the challenges of a social enterprise, operating a social, in a circular economy and a circular economy initiative, is that you have to, it's a constant balancing act. Scott alluded to that before. It is, it's a crazy to put these two things together. So you've got a charitable social purpose, and then you've got a commercial business that has to run with the rigor of a commercial business. For one doesn't work without the other, but when you put the two together in the context of social enterprise, it does create a natural tension which has to be managed. So just with our commercial trading, I just wanted to sort of let everyone in on what we do. So we offer accredited IT recycling services to corporates, government bodies, not-for-profits, the general public as well. And so those services are accredited. So we operate under the National E-Waste Standard, which is 5377. And then that sort of links into the broader National TV and Computer Recycling Scheme in Australia. So I think that's an important context, that we're operating in a sector that's growing and that's robust. And the government is measuring and monitoring the tonnages and keeping that whole system, with their traceability through the system and right through to the downstream recyclers as well. We also do warehousing, logistics and fulfillment services as a fee for service, and also repair, refurbish, retailing of the affordable tech on our online platform. So why do we operate in those industries? Quite simply put, they're stable industries in both Hume, and they're stable industries in Australia, and that means there's jobs. And where there is jobs, there's opportunity for employment for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So we interact, have our programs interact with those commercial businesses in which we operate, providing employability skills. We actually are an employer, but we also look to provide pathways for employment into like-minded businesses. So we'll definitely be in touch with you, Peter from Eagle Lighting, to talk about transitions and pathways from Enable into potentially Eagle Lighting as well. So yes, we also, so the for-purpose part of our business is reinvesting profits into the enterprise itself. A little bit different from a commercial business where we don't have shareholders, we have more likely stakeholders, and equity funding is not permitted as a not-for-profit. So we generate philanthropic funding and look for corporate donors. So you inject funds from elsewhere, it just comes through different channels. And the other for-purpose activity is our initiative, which is the Renew Tech for Good. And then we put our own pound of flesh into that by, offering a social impact discount on the equipment that we sell for people in need. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So let's follow the journey of a laptop. So a laptop comes in. Here's what the Renew Tech for Good initiative serves to do. So the business, public, government donates their decommissioned technology, laptops being of very high need and high value during the pandemic. Enable then refurbishes and repairs that technology. That creates jobs. And they're good jobs too, because they're entry-level IT, because the guys are pretty much getting them up to refurb level, ready for sale online. And then, so we've created a new platform in the click.org.au that where our products end up. And that platform also manages the plethora of community partners whom we work with, who identify the community in need. And then we then start doing the distribution and pick pack. So through these three areas, through the enabled retail, through the actual listings and getting the equipment ready for retail, and then the pick, pack, dispatch. All three of those areas are not just serving to, reuse and reuse the equipment, but it serves to create the jobs through those key three areas there, leading to that collective social impact, working with business, with Enable, to then create that impact. So one doesn't happen without the other. All right, so now we're just going to go through the a design thinking journey that we went through for this program that resulted in some amazing things that happened next through being part of the Circular Advantage program with Scott and also with Peter from Eagle Lighting. So we started off just looking at our data, so looked at the inputs, did a good analysis of those, and then realised that the end of use and end of life ratios could be improved. So I know Scott used this slide earlier, and it is a coincidence, I am sure, that I'm also using this, but we focused on how we would get our inputs, which was the incoming equipment, moving up the hierarchy. And lo and behold, that we worked out that if we did a lot more repairing and refurbing of the equipment, that very thing would happen. And the result of that is the financial return. So from the business perspective, the financial return ramped up significantly because we were retailing the items versus dismantling them and then reselling them, or in some cases having to pay for waste disposal through that dismantling and recycling process. So that in turn increased that profitability. And then, of course, being a champion for having that recycling as a last resort supports that environmental piece as well. So the next piece we did when we're looking at that design thinking of our business is how do we then optimize the process of, so we've got the equipment, we've got the equipment, we're looking at then distributing out to people in need. How would we do that? So we designed a hub and spoke distribution model, which in effect engaged 50 plus at the moment, there's more to come, fellow not-for-profit and community partners, because our job was to get the equipment, refurb it, create the jobs from that, have the stuff ready. We then reached out, because we can't be everything to everyone, and with a collaborative approach said to our community partners, tell us who needs this. Tell us who in your community is in dire need of affordable technology. And then through that, we were then able to reach the people in need a lot quicker than what we would have been able to do it ourselves. And I think that is a testament to community and working together, and in particular how Hume Council were also involved in that, identifying community partners in need, and then also to becoming a funding partner, supporting that getting out to community in need as well. So we then looked at, as part of this whole process, on optimising the process itself, and we did that via a platform. So we introduced that before, which is in the click.org.au, and that platform has got inbuilt design to ensure that we manage those community partner referrals, so the sign-ups for community partners themselves, and then the sign-ups for the people that they're referring to enable. And that platform also manages those social impact discounts so that people are getting that affordable check, when they need it as quickly as possible. And then we do the pick, pack, dispatch in the back end, 1 to 2 days from when the order is placed. Now, a surprise came out from our Circular Advantage program. We're saying, well, look, this is something that we've done. This is working really well. It's resulted in more impact. It's resulted in more jobs because we were doing more in-house, higher technology type work through the refurb and repair stream. What next? And the value add that came out of the program was, well, look, if we're doing the refurb and repair for ourselves, then couldn't we do that as a fee for service for community in need? So the concept of a showroom and a repair hub evolved from the program. We've managed to secure some funding for that from local partner CSL Behring, and we'll be rolling that project out in the next month or so, so that people can come in and get their computers repaired at a fraction of the cost of what it would be for for a mainstream provider. So very dedicated, very local level. We are in the heart of Broadmeadows, and we do have a lot of people that would be in need of that service. And if for whatever reason we couldn't repair their computer, then of course we've got the Affordable Tech program. Hey, look what we've got here in the shelves. Take your pick of what you'd like. So, post-COVID restrictions, we're very excited to have that be part of our the wonderful Hume community that we reside in. So just from a perspective of looking at what we do and how that links into the bigger picture, I know we've spoken a little bit about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is important. So the goals as they stand, the circular economy hits hard on, I believe there were 11 or potentially 12 of those goals. Working with organisations such as Enable It, are social enterprises that do provide employment and training for people with disability, we inherit this as part. So we're a circular economy based organisation. This initiative is part of that circular economy. The jobs that we provide for people with disability and the work and learning hits very heavily on number 8. For decent work and local economic growth. So it's a really important context how we can actually add more value to what we're already doing, around the world by having social enterprise at the table when we're having circular economy discussions. So that's just a little bit of what we do. So far, we've worked with over 1,000 participants with our employability skills. The next strategic link that we've got, or bigger picture link, is around that no poverty. Talking before about, having jobs, poverty and homelessness live hand in hand. So employment's a very important part of what's going on for social enterprise, and how we support access to employment, and also the access to the affordable technology really does hit heavy, or hit nice and hard in that space to help avoid that from happening. So the next one is around how what we do also impacts on the circular economy focus, and in particular how we are, batting hard to reduce the environmental impacts. So by repairing and refurbing, as saying earlier, then we're actually avoiding that end of life, creating another use from the equipment, and avoids it being sent through to the downstream processor. It avoids us sending stuff back overseas. A lot of the lower value equipment that comes through recyclers or asset decommissioners ends up being put on a pallet and sent back overseas, obviously creating a footprint there that we want to reduce. We're keeping the stuff in Australia and then getting some social impact out of the equipment. And I think for us in particular, looking at impact, goal number 9 is in and around how social enterprise, and in particular Enable, has been a great advocate for how social enterprise can be included in a local circular economy ecosystem. And I think that's important, particularly in and around the renewing tech for good, and also creating those local jobs for local people. So there is a significant relevance for social enterprise at the table, from small scale cascading right up to the goals. This is my favourite. There's no question, collaboration and collective impact. When you look at all of the players that are involved, you've got customers. Our customers are also some of the larger players, like Reece was mentioned before. We might be a small to mid-sized enterprise, but we think big and we work big. We've got donors, we've got supply chain partners, we've got community partners, we've got funding partners. There's lots of collaborative players involved in and around everything that we do. And even if you look at the players that are in today, so you've got Steve from Close the Loop, so our toners from our printers that come in through our recycling stream get sent up to Close the Loop work with Downer, and then put them into the roads up in, 2 or 3 kilometres up the road. They also receive, Close the Loop also receive our plastic from our printers, which we sort into 3 different types, and then they put them through the machines, and then they basically on-sell that as a commodity. So there's lots of local partnerships and initiatives going on as we speak. And I think for us, what next? Our platform's there. How can we maybe look to other enterprises and local projects to aggregate the effort that we've made? Is there a future space for remakers and repurposed products? Can we use our website to get those products out there? Can we look at having employees run cooperatives? Can we look at more community hubs? And look at that repair culture, coming back into Australia, and what that looks like as far as our future landscape goes. So that's it from me. I hope that the session itself has provided some interesting context in the Australian social enterprise landscape. And I think for sure, I see social enterprise in Australia in particular as playing an important role in, leveraging from this rise of this circular economy. And I can't wait to see what comes next. With everything going on, and also with the work from the Circular Economy Hub, being a driving force in, bringing everything together, advocating for policy change, etc. It's a very exciting time in Australia, which I'm sure you'll hear more about in the next session. So thank you very much, and I believe it's arigato.
Great, fantastic, Julie. Wow, it's lovely to see everything sort of full steam ahead. Those of you who haven't visited, try popping into in the click. So in the click.org.au, check out the site. Julie, can I ask you? We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to ask you a couple of really quick questions. One is, we will have a number of entrepreneurs who have tuned in to today's workshop, and they are looking for maybe ways that they can get involved in the circular economy, and still manage to, sort of deliver a social impact business. Are there any sort of attractive areas that you would just advise people to explore this area, because this has, I think, wonderful opportunities in the circular economy to twin social impact?
Yeah, look, I think probably it depends on what your focus is. If you want to focus just on creating a circular economy type business, there's ways you can look at doing that. But I think if you're looking at creating a social enterprise, for me, it's all about employment and supporting pathways to employment for people that do experience lots of barriers to work. So if the repair economy is making a comeback, then that's a good space to start. I mean, the way that what we did at Enable, we started with what's stable and growing, and then what can we leverage, to create work and learning opportunities for people that deserve a bit of a go. What industries will provide that? And it doesn't have to be the classic, warehousing type jobs. It can be higher tech. It can be repair. It can be, is there some service industries where you can create, better ways to support communities, such as repairs and maintenance and cheaper repairs. It's a localized effort, but I think my advice would be, start with what the community needs, and if you start with what the community needs in your area, you can then work your way back. It could be, you mentioned, before, it's oyster farming, or it could be bees, or it could be wine, it could be, organic wines. Like, how can you create something that creates those jobs? The answers are sitting at that local level. It's very hard to say this will work in that area, but I think that start with looking at your council statistics and what's growing and what's moving and what's where the issues are, and try and merge those two together. It is a big piece of work, but done well at a localized level, you will also attract a lot of attention and potentially support from local funding partners as well, because it matters to that area.
Thank you. For you, how do you balance the two elements? The first one being, we are a social venture. Mm-hmm. With the other element that is essentially, we are a reliable remanufacturer of IT components. Mm-hmm. Because people aren't. I don't know what the. Whether you've done any research on this, but I would assume that people aren't necessarily coming to you first and foremost because you're a social venture. They're coming because they need, a computer, and they want to make sure that computer is reliable, if we're talking about in the click business. But at the same time, I mean, is there a balance that needs to be made there, or is it just a false, a false dichotomy, as they say?
No, there's definitely a balance. I think it's back to what Steve was talking about before, about collaborations and trust. So your brand is your most overt message that you send out to the world, and you need to have, how you build that trust comes from your brand. So how we build our trust with our customers, we run a great little website. It's nice and clean. It's easy to navigate. We've got our return policies there. We explain to people that where our money's going. So we make the money, it gets reinvested straight back into the organisation, and we're a charity. So people understand who we are. And then when we deal with business, we have a different set of brand trust. So we need that for all of our consumers. But when we're dealing with the businesses who want to donate their equipment to us, there's a whole other set of, I guess, risk reducers or, perception definers around how do we trust these guys? Oh, well, they're accredited under the National E-Waste Scheme. We're a registered charity, an Australian registered charity, not-for-profit, so we have obligations, reporting obligations to the Australian government around our charitable status. We're accredited as a social enterprise. So just as Eagle Lighting are accredited as a B Corp, it sends messages around that, people have looked at what you're doing and that they're very, very legit, and, they're saying what they say they do, they're doing. And I think that's really important. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Julie. As always, the message that you convey acts as a perfect cap to an exploration into corporate circular economy strategy. We are in business for a reason, and the reasons should be altruistic, or at least serving the needs of some community members. So thanks again for coming in, and it's lovely to hear the story as it begins to morph into new directions.